I'm Richard Porter. Oh, he's not here. This is Smith and Sniff, a podcast in which one man talks about cars and many other things. Hello. This is a bit of a different Smith and Sniff this week because Johnny's not here. He's stuck in filming hell, doing loads and loads of stuff for the Late Break Show because they're doing 2 videos a week now, which means double the work. So he's travelling all over the country doing lots and lots of stuff, and I was stuck in writing / doing whatever I do hell, and we couldn't find a time when we were both free to record a podcast. So I'm sitting here in my car on my own, which is a bit weird, and it's doubly weird because I'm in a car park that I thought was quite quiet, but it seems to be a local taxi driver rest place, and there was a man sleeping in a car when I got here, and then a Ford Galaxy minicab has turned up, and the man pulled over and reclined his seat. But then when the other car moved away, the Galaxy moved into his spot like it's the prime sleeping slot, which was a right angle to where he was. I don't understand. I assume it's taxi drivers and it's not some elaborate dogging code. We'll find out. I've just come back, on my way back, from filming for the 3rd series of The Car Years on ITV, where I'm sometimes a pundit and talk some shite. So that'll be on telly later in the year, I suppose. So please watch that when it's on. But that's one of the reasons why we couldn't find time to meet up, because I was doing that, and Johnny is... I can't say where Johnny is today because it'll spoil the surprise, but he's doing something cool for the Late Break Show. So I'm sitting in my Range Rover, which is why you can hear luxurious leather creaking, because that's the car that I drove in today. And I thought for this sort of on-the-fly solo podcast, one of the things that I would do is answer questions that we get sent a lot. And one of those questions is, has your Range Rover gone wrong yet? Which I get asked quite a bit, and I'm loath to always say no because I think that will jinx it, but I'm going to take a brave pill today and say the Range Rover is fine at the moment. I mean, it probably won't start after this, but at the moment, as in when I pulled up, it was fine. I'll give you a recap in a sort of previously on Smith and Sniff kind of style. From the top, we used to have an electric car as a family car. We had a Jag I-Pace, and it was really good, and I liked it a lot, but it was on a lease, and it went back at the end of a 2-year lease, and we did a new car, and we decided not to lease something, and my wife said, why don't we just buy something outright, just as a stopgap, something cheap? And I decided the best car for that job was a supercharged Range Rover, the old generation, an L322 in Range Rover nerd speak, the kind that it seems that Her Majesty the Queen still has, although I think hers might be a diesel, and it's really nice green with no privacy glass, which I like a lot. Mine's silver, and it has got that stupid glass in the back, but I'm not going to go full Chris Harris and have the glass replaced like apparently he's done in his BMW M2, because this was only supposed to be a stopgap car, even though I sort of convinced my wife that the budget should be upped quite a lot, because there aren't that many supercharged Range Rovers for sale relative to the diesels, and the diesels of this shape get clobbered by the ULEZ extension if you live in London, which I do. So I said it had to be a petrol one. They're harder to find, and eventually I found this one at a specialist up north, and did that thing that you have to do if you're buying a car online remotely in good faith, where you get a one-way train ticket in the hope that it's not a complete snotter and that you won't have to go and buy a train ticket at home again, which was my fear of turning up after a whole day away, shamefaced, and going to my family, yeah, I'm afraid it was actually dribbling brown stuff everywhere and bits of it were on fire, so I just got the train home again. But it wasn't. It was fine. It is fine, sort of. So I've had this car almost a year now, So I thought it was a good time to do a little roundup. That's the backstory, that's how I ended up with it. And my logic for persuading my wife that's what we needed was partly because we had loads of summer trips planned in the UK because of COVID and that, no going abroad. Let's do some good British holidays. And we did. We had some lovely holidays, but I thought we have 2 small children and a big dog, and we always seem to cart lots of stuff around, including scooters and small bikes and things. So we need a car that will take all of that clobber and those children / animals. So that's how we ended up with this, and it is brilliant at that, because you can just keep throwing stuff into it. So I bought it last March, I think, and it's a good 10 feet car. It looks mega from 10 feet away. You get a bit closer, you'll notice some of the things are not perfect. There's a few little scuffs and signs of life about it, a life lived, but that's okay. I don't mind that. The one thing that bothers me is the wheels are a tiny bit scabby. I'd love to have those refurbed, but I haven't got around to that yet. Otherwise, it looks quite smart, and people who don't know about cars just kind of go, "Ooh, it's a Range Rover," and they're not really sort of counting generations. It sort of still looks quite modern-ish. This is one of the facelift of the facelift models. It's 2010. It's the one that got the more complicated headlights and digital instruments, and it's sort of a modern car. It's got Bluetooth, it's got reversing camera, which is good because the parking sensors don't work, but that's the only thing on it that doesn't work as far as I know. Fingers crossed. Honestly, I'm crossing my fingers at the moment just in case it doesn't start. But so I bought it, I went to Lancashire, it was fine, particularly from 10 feet away. Got in it, it was on fumes, went to a petrol station, filled it up, had a wee, and then drove 200 odd miles back home in one go. Easy as you like. It was absolutely brilliant, really comfy, and it did 22 and a bit miles to the gallon, which I know in one universe is ridiculous. In another universe I was like, oh, that's quite surprising. I didn't expect that. And that is sort of what it will do. It will do generally between 18 and 22 miles to the gallon, which is either absurd or quite pleasantly surprising, depending on where you're coming from. We don't use it all that much a lot of the time, unless we are going away or something, or so it's not a total headache. I don't constantly fill it with petrol, thank God, because it's got quite a thirsty tank on it. But it's only doing the same MPG as a friend of mine gets from a 3 litre X5, and I'd rather have this. So it's all about perspective, isn't it? Even kind of stupid warped perspective like that. So there we go. But the main question people ask is what's gone wrong with it. So after a year, here's what's gone wrong with it. The parking sensors have never really worked. That's fine. It's got a reversing camera. It's a big box. It's quite easy to park. So I haven't bothered trying to get them fixed, because that would just be someone having to chase an electrical fault around a big car. Not long after I got it, it threw up a low coolant warning, and it turned out the water pump was weeping coolant. They all do that, sir. So I had the water pump replaced. That was the bad news. The good news, it came from a Range Rover specialist up north that gives you 6 months warranty, and to my surprise that warranty is better than the paper it's written on, and the warranty covered the cost of that, so that was good. And then it was also throwing up an occasional suspension warning where it would only sit at normal height. It wouldn't go higher into off-road height or do the drop into access mode, but it would sit at its normal height. So I and it was an intermittent fault, like one journey in 5 it would throw up that fault, which also, weirdly, when the suspension goes a bit bonky, it disables the radar cruise control for reasons I don't quite understand. So that was all fine, but eventually I got that fixed, again under warranty, new suspension pump. Someone subsequently told me apparently it might have just been a connection somewhere that you can have cleaned, but it's fine because the warranty paid for a new suspension pump as well, mostly. A little bit of excess on it, cost me like 100 and something quid, so that was okay. And now the suspension is tippity top, I think. So that's the couple of bits of snagging that I had to do in the first 2 months. Then month 3 we went away in it, and on the way back we're on a nice long straight road in Kent. Someone was dawdling ahead. I pulled out and clogged it. And my children had never been in the car when I'd clogged it before, and they thought it was hilarious that this family bus could suddenly get a right old stomp on. So everybody was laughing with glee as we overtook this person, and then a check engine light came on immediately afterwards. But I'm going to chalk this up as not entirely the car's fault. One of the fan blades on the plastic fan had snapped off, and apparently this happens a lot to cars as they get older, particularly BMWs, I've been told. And I know someone, in fact, who had it happen to a BMW. And I don't know if it's a BMW fan in this, because it's a Jag engine in these later ones, but obviously the car was designed as a BMW, so there's some kind of residual BMW khaki fan syndrome in there. I don't know. But anyway, it's amazing the havoc that a broken off plastic fan blade can wreak under the bonnet. But what happened is it just slushed through the wiring to the fan, and thankfully the fan defaults to being on. It's a viscous fan. This is why it happened when I clogged it, because the fan starts turning faster with the engine turning faster, and it broke off the fan blade through the wiring, which is why the check engine light came on, because suddenly the ECU can't see the fan anymore, and it smashed merry crap out of the plastic cowl over the top of the fan. And all in with the parts and labour, that was almost £1,000 to mend. And once again, the warranty covered almost all of that. And I'm giving, I don't think that's a Range Rover specific problem. I think it's just an 11-year-old car problem. So I'm allowing it a free pass. But at that point, the car has been to the garage once a month in the 3 months that I've had it. And I was thinking, if this carries on, it's going to have to go. But I'm going to touch the attractive wood trimmings on the door when I say, since then, it has been no trouble at all. Not a thing. It's been really good. And we went away. We've been all over the country in it, with all of us in it. I've been away, just me in it. It's a really good hauler of stuff, and there is something about it, there is a sort of feel to it that I can't put my finger on, because it's not actually that good. I mean, it's incredibly bargy. My wife calls it the boat. I did sort of make it feel a bit better in terms of positivity by putting new tyres on it eventually, which was slightly ouchy expense, but worth it, because it just felt better on the road. The steering felt better, and obviously the old tyres weren't shot, they were still legal, but I just wasn't happy with them. They just felt a bit like they were tired. The sidewalls were scuffed and things, so they were the ones that it came with. So I had new tyres put on it, and that made it feel a bit better. But still, you know, it's one of those cars where you feel like you have to sort of send a telegram in advance if you'd like it to change direction. But that's fine. It's a Range Rover. I like the fact it's not trying to be sporty, and there is just something quite nice about it. I think it's because it's got big windows, you can see out. Our children love it because of that, because you can get a good view out. A lot of modern cars, the window line rises up. If you're very little in a car seat, you can't see out very much. So they really like the fact they can see the whole world. And also, one of my kids is still small enough that she needs help getting into her seat and belting in and stuff like that. And I know people sort of complain about SUVs and they're pointless and all that, and I'm not going to argue against that. They kind of are, but they're not without their virtues. And one of them, particularly if you're middle-aged and you're convinced your back's about to go twang at any minute, is that it's very easy to get small children lifted into a car and belted in if the car is higher up. So appreciate that about this. And my dog loves it because she hates being excluded. She's got the worst FOMO of anyone I know, and she doesn't really like riding in the boots of cars if she can help it. But the Range Rover has a flat floor in the back. There's no transmission tunnel hump or anything, and so she can lie at the base of the kids' feet and just be part of the pack in the car. And she loves that. She's part of the gang. She travels with us, and her stupid hairy head sometimes pokes up into the centre armrest, and you can just give her a little pat on the nose. And that's quite nice as well. So it's a good family car, and it's not broken down in the last 8 or 9 months. So there we go. That's my Range Rover. So when people go, "Is your Range Rover broken down?" Yeah, I go, "No, not for ages, thanks." And it's never let me down. That's the thing, because even when the fan blade rather came off and made a bit of a mess of things, it didn't actually stop going. We were able to get back home, and the check engine light was the only sign that anything was up. So, you know, you take these small mercies. I think when you think back to whether a car was reliable or not, it's whether it left you stranded. If it left you stranded, then you remember it as an unreliable bastard thing that let you down. If it went a bit glitchy and had to go to the garage, that's sort of like a step down in unreliability. But if it has to go to the garage every month, then it's probably it's going to get on your nerves. And there was a point in about the 4th month we have it when we were walking past the garage where I've been taking it to get fixed, and my daughter went, "Is our car in there?" As if that was where it was expected to be. And I got a bit defensive. No, of course it's not. It's at home. You saw it. It's at home. Why would it be in there? But I was thinking, is that where she thinks it lives? In the garage where it gets mended. So anyway, that initial run of poor form ended quite quickly. I treat it as snagging. And since then, it's been fine. And I think the more that you learn to trust a car, the more that you can then fall in love with it. And this is sort of where I'm up to now, pending it not starting in a minute. It's not let me down, so it's my friend, and I'm really in love with it. And I don't know how long we'll keep it for now, but I sort of always imagined we might just have it for a year and then get something electric again. And we're not planning on doing that at the moment, because why would we? It's fine. And also there's a bit where my wife went, "Is this we're going to switch an electric car for a supercharged Range Rover? Is this not absolutely cockeyed logic and completely out of step with the times in which we live?" And for me, it was kind of like, you know, those Amish kids who, when they hit 16 or 18, they do a thing called Rumspringer, where they get to go into the big city and basically get drunk and have sex and do whatever else that they would never normally do as Amish people, just to get out of their system. And then they go back to their villages and their farms, and they go back to being Amish. And it's just a bit of blowing off steam, last hurrah. And I treat this as a bit like that. I like electric cars. They're great. There's lots of good electric cars, particularly if you want something sort of nice and comfortable and quiet as a family car. But I wanted one last hurrah of internal combustion. So this is it, and I really like it. But I did. My boy started talking about how they'd been discussing global warming or climate change at school as we were sitting on the tailgate of the Range Rover putting our wellies on, and I thought, he's going to get to an age where he will realise that perhaps this is a sort of unfashionably CO2 emitting car, and start asking questions. To which I'm going to say there's a stout argument about keeping a 12-year-old car, as it is now, going, rather than ordering a new one and having it made, and all the CO2 that involves. So, you know, you can slice the cake different ways, the argument cake, but I'm keeping this going for the time being. So anyway, that was a very long-winded way of saying my Range Rover's fine, thank you for asking, it's all working okay at the moment, cheers. I will let you know maybe if it stops working, but for now it's fine. And I'm sort of quite attached to it, and just how sort of comfy and sloppy and big it is. These are all good things. And I quite like, no, not quite like, really like the way that it's not sort of immediately obviously fast, but when you want it to get a bit of a shift on, it can do it in a sort of like freight train kind of way, where it surges. It doesn't absolutely leap forward, but it surges, and suddenly it's gained a lot of speed that you weren't expecting. And I quite like that, because it means most of the time you don't drive it aggressively, you just sort of, you know, float about, because it's that kind of car. But when you want to, it can do a bit of moving quickly, as long as you don't have to go around corners, because it's not brilliant around corners, but that's fine. I mean, you know, it's a Range Rover. So there's an F-Type pulling into this car park that might have the same engine as this car. This is the 5-litre V8 in this Range Rover, which is the one that some Jag Land Rovers still use. So, I mean, it's quite reassuring because it means probably the parts availability is still okay. I don't know. I hope I don't have to find out anymore. I know you can get fans for it. Definitely know that. And suspension pumps and water pumps. But that's it. That's all. So, anyway, there you go. That's one question answered. The other question that quite a lot of people ask Johnny and me is if we're going to do any more videos for Smith and Sniff. And the answer is maybe, because we don't get together that often. We just don't get the chance. But also, we did that Bond video last year, which we got a videographer for, and we got someone to edit. So it was actually quite expensive, and then it got 30,000 views on YouTube, which is it's not amazing, really, is it? You know, Johnny's stuff on Late Break Show gets way more than that, and it's probably just a little bit disheartening. I mean, we thought we might do a bit better because it was James Bond and because we hadn't done a video for ages, but I think we've realised that's our ceiling. We make a video, a maximum of 30,000 people probably want to watch it. Although, you know, that one we trudged around a field got a bit more than that, quite a bit more. But ultimately, that's probably our natural point at which our sort of subscribers plus a little bit more will watch it. So it's that, but that's not the only reason. It's also, they are quite time consuming to do, and it means us getting together, whereas the podcast we can do remotely and it doesn't take that much time, and it gets a bigger audience than that video did. So that's part of it. But it's not that we won't, it's just that it's hard to find the time to do it, particularly because also Johnny's got to put all of his effort where he can into the Late Break Show, because that is, you know, his job. That's what he does for a living now, most of it anyway, and so he needs to put the effort there. So maybe we'll do a Smith and Sniff lunch in the car on the Late Break Show channel or something like that. I don't know. We've discussed it, and then we never sort of get around to it because we're both a bit busy, and that's where the podcast kind of comes in, because it's quite easy to do and not very time consuming, and so it's sort of path of least resistance for two deeply disorganised men who still can't even pull it together to do a podcast this week. And so that gives you an idea of how tenuous our organisational skills are. They're not brilliant at the best of times. So that's why we haven't done videos again, even though we're sort of allowed to now under COVID rules. It's just because it's getting together, it's a whole day of our times, and it's just easier to do podcasts. But we will, I'm sure, at some point do another vid or something, just maybe not as ambitious as spending a whole day doing that Bond thing, because when we used to have lunch in the car and drive about a bit, we could probably get 3 or 4 videos out of one day's filming, and that Bond one we just got one sort of long video out of a day. So it was not sort of time effective, I don't know, anyway. But hopefully some people enjoyed it. We enjoyed doing it. Worse things to do than drive about London in a Defender looking for Bond cars. But anyway, so I will keep you posted if we ever do a video again. I'm sure we'll mention it a few hundred times. There was a couple of people asking about Late Break Show Live as well, which is obviously that's kind of Johnny's department, but I usually tag along. There will be Late Break Show Lives coming up this year. I'm probably not supposed to say when the first one will be or where, but it's going to be potentially quite cool, and it will happen soon-ish. Probably a bit more of a run-up this year, so that the tickets have longer on sale, so that more people know about it, because we kind of ambushed people a little bit last year, I think, with some of these shows. They were sort of announced a month or so in advance, and I suppose if you give people more notice, maybe more people will be able to turn up because they're free. So there will be Late Break Show live events this year. We'll be doing, you know, usual sort of stuff. Watch this space for details. What else? I can't remember what else I was going to answer. There were some other questions, but I forget. Thank you though to everybody who got in touch about last week's podcast, and particularly the things you can do in Germany at the weekends, which it turns out is quite enlightening. Simon White is a listener, for example, who said, Achtung, having lived in various places in Germany over the years, I can confirm that you absolutely could not wash your car on Sundays or hang washing out. The game has moved on, however, and in an attempt to prevent too much detergent being washed into the watercourse, they've now banned all car washing at home. You must instead convey your motor to a Waschstraßen. Sorry about the pronunciation. And don't start me on their bin police. That's a complete nightmare for the unwary. Thank you, Simon. Andy Pinchuk, who you may remember as the man who sent us the incredible story about driving through the larder factory and then getting stranded in a boat in Russia. He still lives in Germany and has sent a very expansive catch-up on German rules and stuff. It is illegal to leave your car idling for more than 3 minutes, Andy says. Much like you pointed out, anyone who leaves a car idling for more than 10 to 30 seconds, once up to operating temperature, should simply start putting 10 units of their favourite currency in everyone's postal boxes, or they are wasting money, energy and polluting. However, every winter there are articles in the paper in Germany about how you should free your car from ice and snow and then drive off. To my knowledge, most people while driving a car tend to do something called breathing, and a not insignificant part of the makeup of said breath is water vapour. How on earth you are supposed to get into a freezing cold car after working up a mild sweat from scraping ice and snow and not fog up all the windows is beyond me. Then there's also the mechanical sympathy I feel for all the things that are being forced to move at the low temps. That's Andy's take on it. Then he goes on to say, more illegal things in Germany include 1. There is such a thing as garbage police who check to make sure you have separated your trash correctly, paper from plastic, glass from chicken bones, etc. 2. Barbecuing is usually locally regulated. Cities often have rules about only barbecuing once a month, but if you own a house, it's usually not a problem. 3. You must have winter tyres, aka M&S tyres, on your car by 16th of October, else your insurance will not pay if something happens to the car. This includes things like a tree falling on it or it getting broken into. No winter tyres equals no claims. This has led many Germans to thinking you can drive on winter tyres like on summer tyres. They are shocked, Andy says, that the car understeered into a barrier at 80 miles an hour when there is some white substance on the ground. But I had winter tyres on, they lament. This is the good bit, though. Andy's given us some examples. I presume he's not making this up. It sounds almost impossible to believe, but it's brilliant. You can get fined, Andy says, for insulting a police officer that is proportionate to the rudeness of the insult. Literal translations in brackets here, but Bekklopter is crazy person. If you called a police person that, you get a €250 fine. Dummeke, is it? Stupid cow, apparently. That's €300. Also, for €300 you could have Lech mich doch, which means go ahead and lick me, but sort of more translates as blow me, apparently. €300 for that, which is odd because du Blödschwein, stupid pig, is €475. So I don't, well, anyway, apparently that blow me is not as bad as stupid pig in Germany. Einen Polisten Düsen. Oh, I see. It's using the informal do with a police officer whom you do not know is a €600 fine. My God. Be dir Plebswohl. I'm so sorry for the pronunciations. I didn't do a lot of German at school. That means you have a screw loose. Although it literally translates as there is something peeping in your brain, which is a €750 fine for that. And then Stinkefingerzeigen, giving the officer the middle finger, that's €4,000. €4,000 for giving the middle finger. Or in insult terms, the most expensive options you've got are Schlamper, which means slut, that's €1,900. Pfizer Mischduck, it means literally a piece of manure, but sort of evil bitch, apparently. That's €2,500. And Alter Sau, which is old sow, €2,500 for that. Like, that's way not as bad as blow me, but apparently it is in German police swearing fines. And Andy finishes this with, my personal favourite is Ficht dich ins Knie. Is it ins knee? Which is go have intercourse with your own knee. He doesn't say how much that costs to say. I imagine it's probably quite pricey. So that's Andy concludes by saying, even my German wife says German is not the most lovely of languages. She's half Russian and half German. Keep up the good work, Andy. Well, that's fantastic. There's also, we've had on the same thing, James Waller, another listener, who says I was listening to your remarks on car washing in Germany. It's certainly relevant in southern Bavaria, where I was living for the past 4 years. You are allowed to wash your car at home, but only if you can prove that you can capture/process all of the runoff water. This is, I feel like living in Germany is complicated, which I couldn't. I also, someone said to me on social media, it may have actually been Andy Pinchuk as well, said that you're not supposed to use your washing machine on a Sunday because there's silence laws, and the idea that you might go onto a spin cycle and disturb your neighbours is unacceptable. And so by extension, hanging your washing out, certainly wouldn't do that, or even put washing outside on a drying rack on a Sunday, because that would suggest you'd used your washing machine, which is verboten. So that's definitely. Oh, well, there's another one. Hamish Mackenzie entitled his email Schweinhund. You asked for some input on the German side of things. As a Brit who's lived in Munich for 20 years, I thought I'd put across the following. Schweinhund isn't really used as an insult. It's used most frequently in this way: Ich muss meine inner Schweinhund überwinden, which basically means I need to overcome my inner lazy bastards. Right, okay. Actual insults include Arschgeiger, arse violin. Someone who fucks up absolutely everything. Arschgeiger means arse violin. That's brilliant. Jeansbügler means a jeans ironer. Someone's very uptight. And Spargeltatzen, I think that's right, asparagus toss and a thin and gangly man. No mention of how much these would cost you if you said them to a police officer, but arse violin is absolutely fantastic. Hamish also says he's one of a few people actually on the, also talking about things in Germany, a few people who pointed out that Adidas, or Adidas, was created by Adolf Dassler. He was known as Addy. So Addy Dassler, the company name is a contraction of his name. His brother Rudolf, or Rudy, fell out with him, and Rudy went off and started Puma. So Puma and Adidas were founded by competing, warring brothers. Someone else sent me an email about this, I can't remember now who it was, pointing out that not only that, oh, here we go, it was Richard Howard. He said they set up factories in the same small German town of Herzogenaurach. I'm so sorry about the pronunciation. Separated only by the Aurach River. So they had factories on opposite sides of the same river in the same town. The feud continued till they both died in the 70s, and they were subsequently buried in the same small cemetery at opposite ends, obviously. Thank you, Richard, for that. But back to Hamish's message, because he's lived in Munich for 20 years. He also knows about driveways. Spotless driveway is definitely a thing, particularly when they belong to houses owned by pensioners. And he says, finally, on car cleaning, I'm not allowed to clean my car at my house at all. I have to drive to a designated car wash where I can do it myself, as long as I only use the equipment provided by the garage owner. And don't bring anything else with me, not even a chamois leather. Okay, well, that's, I mean, I don't even understand why that would be, but good. Anyway, so to sum up, there's a lot of rules in Germany, and don't break them. Another thing that was covered in last week's podcast, LaRue, but Per, a man called Per Eld, who seems to live in Gothenburg, said, speaking of the talented artist LaRue, we who follow her on Instagram marvel at her exquisite taste in cars. I'm surprised you didn't tap into this. We didn't know about it, Per. If we'd known, we'd have gone there, but I didn't realise. I don't follow LaRue on Instagram. I probably should. Per says she often posts photos of her AMG Mercedes. I suspect is a C-Class coupe. This I did check out, Per, and I forgot to follow her when I did. I had a quick look, and yeah, it's a C-Class coupe, but I'm not sure it's an AMG. I think it might just be a sort of normal non-AMG one. But even so, it's quite smart, and it's blue, and she's obviously very pleased with it because she's posted a picture of her leaning on it. on her Insta, so which pair is attached to his email as well. So there we go. LaRue might be into cars. We don't know for sure, but she definitely has a Mercedes of some sort. Lots of people were pointing out the Toyota Blade that I saw. There was a 2.4 V6 one, but the saucy one was the Blade Master. Back once again with the Toyota Blade Master 3.5 V6, and it's the one Phil Askew, as a listener who got in touch and pointed this out. He says the V6 in the Blade is not just some plain V6, it's actually the 2GR, like what Lotus use in the Exige Evora. Some even have an optional TRD supercharger in a car that looks like your grand's Pride and Trolley. Pride and Trolley? Love the show, but Richard tails off in longer sentences, so I turn it up and then poo myself when Johnny cuts in, which is highly inconvenient. It's like a DSG fart when you aren't expecting it. I didn't know that I did that. I'm probably doing it lots here, but there's no Johnny to make you poo yourself, so well, we'll try not to do that in future, Phil. Somebody also on our Patreon, somebody else pointed, I'm sorry I can't remember your name or find what you said, but the gist was not only that, yes, the Toyota Blade Master has a 3.5 V6, but that Lotus brought one to this country when they were developing the automatic gearbox option for the Evora. So somewhere in Norfolk they were kicking around, maybe still are, I don't know, in back once again with the Toyota Blade Master. That's about it for things that people got in touch with last week. Mostly it was about German things. I wish I could find some more of the messages, but I can't. And also about the Blade Master. And probably there was one other thing, but I'm forgetting it now. No messages from goats. I was hoping that a goat farmer would get in touch, or an actual goat, and say, how dare you suggest that I live off crockery and snooker balls and leather trousers, but they didn't, so I think their silence speaks volumes. Goats probably do eat all of those things. Somebody who's calling themselves Talk Wrench, spelt Talk, nice, sent in a mock-up of Johnny's horse care YouTube page, and with a little bit of blurb for this week's video. It says, this week Johnny aims to debunk the great myths that horses are real and not just big dogs, with special guest star Claire Balding. Thank you for that nice bit of graphic work. I'll stick that on the Patreon along with a load of other old toss as usual. Well, anyway, I'm sorry about this podcast. I wish Johnny was here. It would have been a lot more interesting and funny. But as I said, he's all over the place at the moment filming. We will go back to normal service next week, I promise, unless we fuck it up and forget to find the time to do it. But that probably won't happen. Probably. I mean, we've got to 95 episodes and it's only happened once, so which is frankly a miracle. Anyway, before I go, I've got 3 things to tell you. They are: 1, Johnny has a solo YouTube channel. It's called The Late Break Show. You know this by now, I'm sure, but go there and watch one of his videos. They're all good. Take your pick. 2, I have got various books out. The latest one is called Boring Car Trivia 3. It's available from Amazon as a paperback or an ebook, or you can buy the paperback from the Late Break Show merch shop, but there's also some Smith & Sniff t-shirts and hats and mugs and all that stuff. It's thelatebreakshow.com, and then go to the merch tab. And we've got some new merch coming soon, hopefully, so if you want to set up a goat buffet, there'll be some new mugs and t-shirts quite soon. And the third thing I've got to tell you is that Macaulay Culkin's middle names are Macaulay and Culkin. His full name is Macaulay Culkin. He wasn't christened that. He legally changed his name to that in 2018. I think he asked people on social media what he should change his middle name to, and they may have slightly Boaty McBoat-faced him. I don't know the full details. But anyway, Macaulay Culkin, the actor out of Home Alone. And that's it. Thank you ever so much for listening. Once again, I do apologise for this. If you've made it this far, give yourself a biscuit. Back to normal service next week, but until then, goodbye. starts.